The town of Havenwood was usually a quiet place, the kind of town where everyone knew their neighbors and gossip traveled faster than the morning newspaper. But 30 years ago, a shadow fell over Havenwood, a darkness that lingered for decades. It was the summer of '93 when 8-year-old Daisy Peterson disappeared. Daisy was a bright, bubbly girl with pigtails and a gap-toothed smile. She loved playing in her backyard, building forts out of blankets and dreaming of becoming an astronaut. One sunny afternoon, while her mother was inside preparing lunch, Daisy vanished. A frantic search began immediately. Neighbors, police, and even volunteers from nearby towns scoured the woods, fields, and riverbanks. They called Daisy's name until their voices were hoarse. But Daisy was nowhere to be found. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. The hope of finding Daisy alive dwindled with each passing sunset. Eventually, the search was scaled back, but the investigation continued. Detectives followed every lead, interviewed countless people, and examined every piece of evidence. But nothing panned out. The case went cold. The Peterson family was devastated. Daisy's parents, Sarah and Tom, were never the same. Their laughter faded, replaced by a constant ache in their hearts. They moved away from Havenwood, unable to bear the memories that haunted their home. But they never gave up hope that one day, they would learn what happened to their little girl. The unsolved mystery hung over Havenwood like a heavy cloud. People whispered about Daisy's disappearance, wondering if the killer was still living among them. The case became a grim reminder of the fragility of innocence and the enduring power of grief. The police department kept the file open, a silent testament to their commitment to finding justice for Daisy. Every few years, a new detective would be assigned to review the case, hoping to find a new angle or a missed clue. But the trail had long gone cold. The evidence was limited, and the witnesses' memories had faded. It seemed like Daisy's disappearance would remain a mystery forever. The lack of leads was a constant source of frustration for law enforcement, a stark reminder of the limitations of even the most dedicated investigation. The Peterson family lived with the agonizing uncertainty, their lives forever marked by the void left by Daisy's absence. The town, too, carried the weight of the unsolved crime, a dark secret buried beneath its peaceful facade. While the mystery of Daisy Peterson's disappearance cast a long shadow, life, in its own way, continued. A few towns over from Havenwood, in the smaller, even quieter village of Oakhaven, another little girl was experiencing a very different kind of milestone. Lily was 7 years old, a bundle of energy with bright eyes and a love for all things sparkly. She was in the 2nd grade and, like many children her age, she was losing her baby teeth. One morning, as she was eating a crisp apple, she felt a wiggle in her lower jaw. Her front tooth, the one that had been hanging on by a thread for weeks, was finally ready to come out. With a mix of excitement and apprehension, Lily wiggled the tooth back and forth, giggling as it became looser and looser. Finally, with a gentle tug, the tooth popped out, leaving a small gap in her smile. She ran to her mother, Emily, her face beaming with pride. "Mommy, Mommy, it came out!" Lily exclaimed, holding up the tiny tooth for her mother to see. Emily smiled, her heart swelling with love. "Oh, Lily, that's wonderful. You're growing up so fast." She carefully took the tooth from Lily and wrapped it in a soft tissue. "Let's put it in your memory box," she said, leading Lily to a small, wooden box adorned with colorful stickers and glitter. The memory box was a collection of Lily's childhood treasures, her first drawing, a lock of her baby hair, a tiny pair of shoes, and other mementos that Emily cherished. Each item held a special memory, a reminder of Lily's journey from infancy to childhood. Emily carefully placed the tooth in the box, nestled among the other precious keepsakes. She knew that one day, Lily would look back at these items and remember the joys and wonders of her childhood. It was a simple act, a mother preserving a piece of her daughter's past. Little did she know that this seemingly insignificant gesture would one day play a crucial role in unraveling a dark secret and bringing justice to a family torn apart by tragedy. The memory box, a symbol of love and nostalgia, would become an unlikely key to solving a decades-old mystery. The small tooth, carefully tucked away, held a secret that would eventually echo through time, connecting Lily's innocent childhood to the long-unsolved disappearance of Daisy Peterson. The years marched on, each one a silent testament to the unsolved mystery of Daisy Peterson. The seasons changed, children grew up, and Havenwood slowly began to heal, but the memory of that missing little girl never truly faded. The cold case file, a thick manila folder filled with faded photographs, witness statements, and dead ends, sat in the back of a dusty cabinet at the Havenwood Police Department. Detectives came and went, each one taking a turn to revisit the Peterson case. They would sit at their desks, poring over the old documents, trying to find a new angle, a missed clue, anything that could break the decades-long silence. They felt the weight of the unsolved mystery, the burden of knowing that Daisy's family was still waiting for answers. Detective Michael Evans, a seasoned officer with graying hair and a weary gaze, remembered when Daisy disappeared. He was a young patrolman back then, fresh out of the academy, and he had participated in the initial search. He remembered the frantic energy, the desperate hope, and the crushing disappointment when Daisy wasn't found. Now, years later, he was reviewing the case file again, his heart heavy with sadness. He knew the chances of solving the case were slim, but he couldn't shake the feeling that he owed it to Daisy and her family to keep trying. He reread the witness statements, examined the crime scene photos, and reviewed the list of suspects, all of whom had been cleared due to lack of evidence. Each time a detective picked up the file, the same questions arose. Had they missed something? Was there a piece of evidence that had been overlooked? Could modern technology offer a new perspective? The answers always seemed to elude them. The Peterson case was a constant reminder of the limitations of law enforcement, the frustration of knowing that sometimes, despite their best efforts, justice remains elusive. The weight of the unsolved mystery pressed down on the detectives, a silent challenge to their skills and their dedication. They knew that solving the case wouldn't bring Daisy back, but it would bring closure to her family and perhaps, finally, allow Havenwood to truly heal. And so, the file remained open, a symbol of hope and a promise that Daisy Peterson would never be forgotten. The detectives carried the burden of the past, hoping that one day, a new clue would emerge from the shadows, leading them to the truth. After years of seasoned detectives taking their turn with the Peterson case, a fresh perspective arrived at the Havenwood Police Department. Detective Sarah Jenkins was young, energetic, and armed with a passion for justice and a firm belief in the power of modern forensic technology. She had just transferred from a larger city police force, eager to make a difference in a smaller community. Sarah had heard about the Daisy Peterson case during her academy training. It was one of those cases that stuck with you, a reminder of the darkness that can lurk even in the most peaceful places. When she learned that the case was still open, she immediately volunteered to take it on. Her colleagues were skeptical. "It's a cold case, Sarah," Detective Evans warned her. "Everything that could be done has been done." But Sarah was undeterred. She believed that with new advancements in forensic science, there was always a chance, no matter how small, of finding a new lead. She had a particular interest in DNA analysis and had followed the development of new techniques that could extract DNA from even the most degraded samples. Sarah approached the case with fresh eyes. She started by rereading the entire file, paying close attention to the details that had been overlooked or dismissed in the past. She consulted with forensic experts, asking them about the latest technologies and their potential applications to the Peterson case. She was particularly interested in a piece of fabric found at the scene where Daisy was last seen. It was a small fragment, barely larger than a postage stamp, and previous attempts to extract DNA from it had been unsuccessful. But Sarah was convinced that with the right techniques, it might still hold a clue. Sarah's enthusiasm and determination were infectious. Even Detective Evans, initially skeptical, began to feel a glimmer of hope. He admired her dedication and her willingness to challenge conventional wisdom. He knew that solving the Peterson case would be a long shot, but with Sarah on the case, he felt like there was finally a chance. Sarah's arrival marked a turning point in the investigation. She brought a new energy and a new approach, breathing life back into a case that had been dormant for far too long. Her belief in the power of modern forensic technology would ultimately lead her down a path that no one could have predicted, a path that would eventually connect a childhood tooth in a memory box to the decades-old mystery of Daisy Peterson's disappearance. Detective Sarah Jenkins meticulously reviewed every piece of evidence collected from the Daisy Peterson case, spreading out the old photographs, maps, and reports across a large table in the evidence room. The air hung heavy with the scent of dust and old paper, a testament to the years that had passed since the crime. She focused on the small fragment of fabric, carefully preserved in an evidence bag. It was a faded blue color, and the fibers were frayed and worn. Previous attempts to extract DNA had been unsuccessful, but Sarah refused to give up. She carefully examined the fabric under a magnifying glass, searching for any trace of biological material. She found it, a tiny speck of what appeared to be dried blood, almost invisible to the naked eye. It was a long shot, but Sarah knew it was the best chance she had. She carefully documented the location of the speck and sent the fabric to the state crime lab, requesting another attempt at DNA extraction. Days turned into weeks as Sarah waited for the results. She knew that the DNA, if it existed, would be highly degraded due to the age of the sample and the environmental conditions it had been exposed to. The lab technicians warned her that the chances of obtaining a usable DNA profile were slim. Finally, the report arrived. The lab had managed to extract a small amount of DNA from the speck of blood, but the sample was indeed highly degraded. The DNA was fragmented, and there were significant gaps in the genetic code. It would be difficult, if not impossible, to obtain a complete DNA profile. Sarah was disappointed but not discouraged. She knew that even a partial DNA profile could be useful. She consulted with a forensic DNA expert, Dr. Emily Carter, who specialized in analyzing degraded DNA samples. Dr. Carter explained that while a complete profile was ideal, new techniques allowed them to compare partial profiles to potential suspects or to search databases for familial matches. The challenge was significant. The degraded DNA meant that the results would be less precise, increasing the risk of false positives or false negatives. But Sarah was determined to explore every possibility. She knew that even a small piece of information could be the key to unlocking the mystery of Daisy Peterson's disappearance. The degraded DNA sample represented a fragile thread of hope in a case that had been shrouded in darkness for far too long. With the degraded DNA sample presenting such a challenge, Detective Sarah Jenkins immersed herself in learning about the latest advancements in forensic DNA analysis. Dr. Carter, the forensic DNA expert, shared information about techniques that were pushing the boundaries of what was previously thought possible. One technique, in particular, caught Sarah's attention: familial DNA searching. This method involved comparing the partial DNA profile from the crime scene to large DNA databases, not to find an exact match, but to identify potential relatives of the person who left the DNA. The idea was that if a relative's DNA was in the database, it could provide a lead to the actual suspect. Sarah knew that familial DNA searching was a long shot. It was a relatively new technique, and it had only been used successfully in a handful of cases. It also raised ethical concerns about privacy and the potential for misidentification. But she felt that it was worth exploring, given the lack of other leads in the Peterson case. She carefully considered the risks and benefits, weighing the potential for success against the ethical implications. She consulted with her superiors, explaining the technique and the reasons why she believed it was worth pursuing. They were hesitant, but they ultimately agreed to let her proceed, provided she followed strict guidelines and obtained the necessary legal authorization. Sarah obtained a court order authorizing the familial DNA search. She then submitted the partial DNA profile to the state crime lab, requesting that they compare it to the state's DNA database, as well as the National CODIS database, for potential familial matches. The wait was agonizing. Sarah knew that the chances of finding a relative in the database were slim, but she couldn't shake the feeling that this was their best hope. She spent hours researching the technique, learning about the statistical probabilities and the potential pitfalls. Days turned into weeks, and Sarah began to wonder if the search had been a waste of time. But then, one morning, she received a call from the state crime lab. They had found a partial match, a distant relative of the person who left the DNA on the fabric fragment. The relative lived in a nearby town, and their name was Emily Carter, Lily's mother. The news that the familial DNA search had yielded a partial match sent a jolt of adrenaline through Detective Sarah Jenkins. But the identity of the relative, Emily Carter, left her reeling. Emily Carter, the mother of Lily, the little girl who lost her tooth and whose mother carefully placed it in a memory box. The connection seemed impossible, almost surreal. Sarah tried to make sense of it. Emily Carter had no prior connection to Daisy Peterson or the town of Havenwood. She had no criminal record and no apparent motive. Why would Emily Carter's DNA be linked to the crime scene? She shared the information with Detective Evans, who was equally stunned. They spent hours reviewing Emily Carter's background, searching for any connection to the Peterson case. They interviewed her neighbors, her co-workers, and her family members, but they found nothing to suggest that she was involved in Daisy's disappearance. However, the DNA evidence couldn't be ignored. Sarah knew that Emily Carter was a relative of the person who left the DNA on the fabric fragment. The question was, how closely related were they? Was Emily Carter a sister, a cousin, or a more distant relative? Sarah consulted with Dr. Carter, the forensic DNA expert, to better understand the implications of the partial match. Dr. Carter explained that the degree of relatedness could be estimated based on the amount of shared DNA. She also explained that familial DNA searches often led to unexpected results, as people were often unaware of their family history. Sarah decided to focus her investigation on Emily Carter's family tree. She obtained Emily's permission to access her family's genealogical records, and she began to trace her ancestry, looking for any connection to Havenwood or the Peterson family. The research was tedious and time-consuming, but Sarah was determined to find an explanation for the DNA match. She interviewed distant relatives, pored over old census records, and visited local historical societies. Slowly, a picture began to emerge. Sarah discovered that Emily Carter had a brother, Michael Thompson, who had lived in Havenwood in the early 1990s. Michael Thompson had been a suspect in the Daisy Peterson case, but he had been cleared due to lack of evidence. Michael Thompson was Lily's uncle. The connection was becoming clearer, but it also raised new questions. Where was Michael Thompson now? And what role did he play in Daisy Peterson's disappearance? The familial DNA search had opened a door, but it was now up to Sarah to follow the trail and uncover the truth. With Michael Thompson now a key focus of the investigation, Detective Sarah Jenkins needed to gather more information about him and his connection to Emily Carter and Lily. She decided to interview Emily again, this time focusing on her brother, Michael. During the interview, Emily was visibly nervous. She confirmed that Michael had lived in Havenwood in the early 1990s and that he had been a suspect in the Daisy Peterson case. However, she insisted that he was innocent. She said that Michael had a troubled past but that he would never hurt a child. Sarah gently probed Emily about Michael's current whereabouts, but Emily claimed that she hadn't seen or spoken to him in years. She said that he had drifted from place to place, working odd jobs and staying out of touch with the family. As the interview drew to a close, Sarah decided to take a chance. She asked Emily about Lily and her childhood. She asked about the memory box, the one that Emily had carefully filled with Lily's childhood treasures. Emily's eyes softened as she spoke about the memory box. She described it as a collection of precious moments, a reminder of Lily's growth and happiness. Sarah asked if the memory box contained anything that might have belonged to Michael. Emily paused, her brow furrowed in thought. "No, I don't think so," she said. "It's mostly just Lily's things." But then, a flicker of realization crossed her face. "Wait a minute," she said. "There is one thing. Lily lost a tooth when she was little, and I put it in the memory box. Michael might have been around when she lost it. I don't know why that would matter though." Sarah's heart skipped a beat. She knew that a tooth could contain valuable DNA that could be compared to the degraded sample from the crime scene. She cautiously asked Emily if she would be willing to allow the police to examine the memory box. Emily hesitated. The memory box was a personal and sentimental item, but she also wanted to help solve the mystery of Daisy Peterson's disappearance. After a moment of reflection, she agreed. She understood that the tooth might hold the key to unlocking the truth. She drove to her house with Detective Jenkins, retrieved the old, sticker-covered box, and handed it over, praying she was doing the right thing. Detective Sarah Jenkins carefully transported Lily's memory box to the Havenwood Police Department. She knew that the tooth inside could hold the key to solving the Daisy Peterson case, but she also knew that she needed to follow proper legal procedures. She couldn't simply test the tooth without a warrant. She presented the evidence to a judge, explaining the familial DNA search, the connection to Michael Thompson, and the potential significance of the tooth in the memory box. The judge, recognizing the importance of the case, granted a warrant authorizing the police to test the DNA from the tooth. Sarah carefully packaged the tooth and sent it to the state crime lab, requesting a full DNA profile. She knew that the tooth, unlike the degraded sample from the fabric fragment, could yield a complete and accurate DNA profile. The wait was agonizing, but this time, the anticipation was different. Sarah felt a sense of hope, a feeling that they were finally on the verge of a breakthrough. She knew that if the DNA from the tooth matched the DNA from the crime scene, it would provide irrefutable evidence linking Michael Thompson to Daisy Peterson's disappearance. Days later, the call came. Sarah held her breath as the lab technician delivered the news. The DNA profile from the tooth was a perfect match to the degraded DNA found on the fabric fragment. The lab technician repeated, "Detective Jenkins, the DNA from the tooth is a complete and perfect match to the DNA found at the crime scene. There is no doubt. It's him." A wave of relief washed over Sarah. After decades of uncertainty, they finally had a solid lead. The childhood tooth, carefully preserved in a memory box, had provided the crucial piece of evidence that had eluded investigators for so long. The memory box, intended to hold happy memories, had revealed a dark secret. Sarah immediately shared the news with Detective Evans, who was overjoyed. They knew that they still had work to do, but the DNA match was a game-changer. It provided them with the probable cause they needed to bring Michael Thompson in for questioning. The tooth had spoken, and its message was clear: Michael Thompson was their prime suspect. The pursuit of justice, dormant for so long, was reignited with the force of irrefutable scientific evidence. With the DNA evidence firmly pointing to Michael Thompson as the prime suspect in Daisy Peterson's disappearance, Detective Sarah Jenkins and Detective Michael Evans began the process of locating him. They discovered that he was living in a small town several states away, working as a handyman. They coordinated with local law enforcement in that town, and Michael Thompson was taken into custody without incident. He was informed of the outstanding warrant for questioning in connection with the Daisy Peterson case and agreed to be transported back to Havenwood. Michael Thompson, now in his late 50s, was a shadow of the man he once was. He was gaunt, with tired eyes and a weary demeanor. He seemed surprised and confused by the arrest, claiming that he had no idea why the police wanted to talk to him. Back in Havenwood, Michael Thompson was brought to the police station for questioning. Detective Sarah Jenkins and Detective Michael Evans sat across from him in the interrogation room, the weight of the decades-old mystery hanging heavy in the air. Sarah began by reviewing Michael Thompson's past connection to the case. She reminded him that he had been a suspect in the initial investigation but had been cleared due to lack of evidence. She then presented him with the DNA evidence, explaining how the tooth from Lily's memory box had provided a perfect match to the DNA found at the crime scene. Michael Thompson listened intently, his expression unreadable. He denied any involvement in Daisy Peterson's disappearance, claiming that he was being framed. He said that he barely knew Daisy and that he had no reason to harm her. Sarah pressed him further, asking him about his relationship with Daisy's family and his whereabouts on the day she disappeared. Michael Thompson became evasive, his answers vague and inconsistent. He claimed that he couldn't remember the details of that day, that it had been too long ago. Sarah knew that she was getting close to the truth. She could see the fear in Michael Thompson's eyes, the guilt that he had carried for so many years. She just needed to find the right way to break through his defenses and get him to confess. The evidence was mounting, but a confession would seal the case. He was more than just a suspect, he was an acquaintance of the victim from decades ago. Detective Sarah Jenkins continued to press Michael Thompson, pointing out the inconsistencies in his story and the overwhelming weight of the DNA evidence. Detective Evans remained silent, his presence a constant reminder of the gravity of the situation. "Michael," Sarah said, her voice firm but compassionate, "we know that you were there. We know that your DNA was found on the fabric fragment. We know that you're connected to Daisy Peterson's disappearance. It's time to tell us what happened." Michael Thompson continued to deny any involvement, his voice growing increasingly strained. He insisted that the DNA evidence was a mistake, that there must be some other explanation. Sarah decided to change her approach. She showed Michael a photograph of Daisy Peterson, a picture of her smiling and full of life. "Michael, Daisy was just a little girl," she said. "She deserved to grow up, to have a life. Her family has been waiting for answers for 30 years. Help us give them closure. Help us bring Daisy home." Michael Thompson looked at the photograph, his eyes filled with tears. He remained silent for a long time, his body trembling. Finally, he broke down. Okay, he sobbed. "I did it. I killed her." He began to recount the events of that fateful day in 1993. He explained that he had been struggling with personal problems and had been drinking heavily. He had encountered Daisy in the woods near her home and, in a moment of rage and despair, he had attacked her. He claimed that he hadn't intended to kill her, but that things had spiraled out of control. He had panicked and buried her body in a shallow grave, hoping that she would never be found. He expressed remorse for his actions, saying that he had been haunted by guilt and regret for the past 30 years. He said that he had wanted to confess for a long time, but that he had been too afraid of the consequences. With a confession finally secured, Sarah felt a mix of relief and sadness. The Daisy Peterson case was finally solved, but the truth was heartbreaking. The years of unanswered questions, the pain and suffering of the Peterson family, all stemmed from a single act of violence. But now the Peterson family could have closure. Michael Thompson's long-held secret was finally out. Sarah got him to reveal the location of Daisy's remains. The confession was a breakthrough, but recovering Daisy would bring the Petersons even more peace. Michael Thompson's arrest and confession sent shockwaves through Havenwood and beyond. The news spread like wildfire, making headlines on local and national news outlets. After 30 long years, the mystery of Daisy Peterson's disappearance had finally been solved. Lily and her mother, Emily, were stunned by the news. They had no idea that their lives were so intertwined with the Daisy Peterson case. They were both shocked and saddened to learn that Michael Thompson, Emily's brother and Lily's uncle, was responsible for the crime. Emily felt a profound sense of guilt and betrayal. She had always believed in her brother's innocence, despite his troubled past. Now, she had to come to terms with the fact that he had committed a horrific act and that she had unwittingly played a role in bringing him to justice. Lily, now a young woman, struggled to comprehend the events that had unfolded. She couldn't believe that her childhood tooth, a simple memento of her youth, had been instrumental in solving a decades-old murder. She felt a sense of responsibility, a feeling that she had somehow been chosen to play a part in this tragic story. Despite their shock and sadness, Lily and Emily were also relieved that the case was finally solved. They knew that Michael Thompson would be held accountable for his actions and that Daisy Peterson's family could finally have closure. The uncertainty that had lingered for so long was finally gone, replaced by a sense of peace and resolution. The media descended upon Havenwood, eager to report on the case. Detective Sarah Jenkins and Detective Michael Evans were praised for their dedication and perseverance in solving the cold case. They were hailed as heroes for bringing justice to Daisy Peterson and her family. The Peterson family, who had moved away from Havenwood years ago, were contacted by the police and informed of Michael Thompson's arrest and confession. They were overwhelmed with emotion, a mixture of grief, anger, and relief. After 30 years of unanswered questions, they finally knew the truth. The nightmare was finally over. The arrest and confession were a step towards healing. The community could begin to heal as well. The trial of Michael Thompson began several months after his arrest, drawing intense media attention and captivating the nation. The courtroom was packed with reporters, members of the public, and the Peterson family, who were determined to see justice served for Daisy. The prosecution presented a strong case against Michael Thompson, built upon the overwhelming DNA evidence, his confession to the police, and other supporting details. They called Detective Sarah Jenkins to the stand to testify about the investigation, the familial DNA search, and the discovery of Lily's tooth in the memory box. Sarah Jenkins calmly and methodically explained the complex forensic science involved in the case, making it understandable to the jury. She described how the degraded DNA from the fabric fragment had led them to Emily Carter and how the tooth from Lily's memory box had provided the irrefutable link to Michael Thompson. The prosecution also played Michael Thompson's confession for the jury, allowing them to hear his own words describing the events of that tragic day in 1993. The confession was chilling and disturbing, revealing the depth of his guilt and remorse. In addition to the DNA evidence and the confession, the prosecution presented other supporting details, such as witness testimony and forensic analysis of the crime scene. They called experts to testify about the condition of Daisy Peterson's remains and the location where they were found, further corroborating Michael Thompson's confession. The defense team attempted to discredit the DNA evidence and argue that Michael Thompson's confession was coerced. They questioned the reliability of the familial DNA search and suggested that there might be other explanations for the DNA match. They also argued that Michael Thompson had been under duress during the interrogation and that his confession was not voluntary. However, the prosecution's case was strong and compelling, and the DNA evidence was particularly difficult to refute. The fact that the DNA from Lily's tooth matched the DNA from the crime scene was a powerful piece of evidence that resonated with the jury. The trial was a difficult and emotional experience for everyone involved, particularly the Peterson family, who were forced to relive the pain of Daisy's disappearance. But they remained steadfast in their determination to see justice served. The prosecution built a wall of evidence around Michael Thompson, from which it was hard to imagine him escaping. The trial was the final stage in a journey that had begun 30 years ago, a journey towards truth and closure. Following closing arguments, the jury retired to deliberate, their task to weigh the evidence and determine whether the prosecution had proven Michael Thompson's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. The courtroom was filled with a palpable tension as everyone awaited their verdict. Hours turned into what felt like days. The Peterson family, Detective Sarah Jenkins, Detective Michael Evans, and the reporters all remained in the courthouse, anxiously awaiting news from the jury room. The silence was broken only by hushed whispers and the occasional sigh. The longer the jury deliberated, the more uncertain everyone became. Some speculated that the length of the deliberations meant that the jury was divided, that there might be a hung jury. Others remained optimistic, believing that the weight of the evidence would ultimately lead to a guilty verdict. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the jury sent a message to the judge, indicating that they had reached a verdict. The news spread quickly through the courthouse, and everyone rushed back into the courtroom, their hearts pounding with anticipation. Michael Thompson was brought back into the courtroom, his face pale and drawn. He stood silently as the jury filed back into their seats. The judge asked the foreperson of the jury if they had reached a verdict. The foreperson responded that they had. The judge then asked the foreperson to read the verdict. The foreperson stood and, in a clear and steady voice, announced, "We, the jury, find the defendant, Michael Thompson, guilty of murder in the first degree." A collective gasp filled the courtroom. The Peterson family erupted in tears of joy and relief. Detective Sarah Jenkins and Detective Michael Evans exchanged a look of satisfaction, knowing that their hard work had finally paid off. Michael Thompson stood motionless, his head bowed in defeat. Justice had finally been served for Daisy Peterson. After so long, there was an ending. This long chapter in the lives of so many could finally come to a close. Outside the courthouse, after the verdict was read, Sarah and Tom Peterson, Daisy's parents, stood before a throng of reporters, their faces etched with a mixture of grief and gratitude. They thanked the jury for their service and expressed their appreciation for the hard work and dedication of the prosecution team. Sarah Peterson then turned to Detective Sarah Jenkins, her voice choked with emotion. "Detective Jenkins," she said, "we can never thank you enough for what you've done for us. You never gave up on Daisy. You brought her home after all these years." Tom Peterson added, "We also want to thank the forensic team, the lab technicians, everyone who played a role in solving this case. You used science and technology to uncover the truth, to bring justice to our daughter." The Petersons spoke of the pain and uncertainty they had endured for 3 decades, the constant wondering and the never-ending search for answers. They described how the unsolved mystery had haunted their lives, casting a shadow over every joy and accomplishment. But now, they said, they finally had closure. They knew what had happened to Daisy, and they knew that her killer had been brought to justice. They could finally begin to heal, to move forward with their lives, knowing that Daisy would never be forgotten. "It's not going to bring Daisy back," Sarah Peterson said, tears streaming down her face, "but it's going to give us some peace. We can finally lay her to rest and remember her for the beautiful little girl she was." The Petersons also expressed their gratitude to Lily and Emily, whose unwitting involvement had been crucial to solving the case. They said that they were grateful for their cooperation and understanding, and that they admired their strength and resilience. The resolution of the Daisy Peterson case was a testament to the power of perseverance, the importance of never giving up hope, and the ability of science and technology to uncover the truth, even after decades of uncertainty. The Peterson family could finally find some measure of peace, knowing that Daisy's memory would live on and that her killer would be held accountable for his actions. After years of anguish, they could now try to rebuild their lives. The nightmares could finally begin to fade. In the aftermath of the trial and the outpouring of media attention, Lily found herself reflecting on the extraordinary and unexpected role her childhood tooth had played in bringing justice to Daisy Peterson and her family. It was a strange and surreal experience, to think that something so small and insignificant could have such a profound impact. She remembered losing the tooth, the excitement and the slight apprehension she had felt as it wiggled loose. She remembered her mother, Emily, carefully wrapping it in a tissue and placing it in the memory box, a simple act of love and preservation. The memory box, once a symbol of childhood innocence and happy memories, now held a powerful and complex significance. It was no longer just a collection of sentimental mementos, it was a key to unlocking a dark secret, a tool for bringing a killer to justice. Lily felt a sense of responsibility, a feeling that she had been chosen to play a part in this tragic story. She couldn't explain why or how, but she knew that her childhood tooth had somehow been destined to help solve the Daisy Peterson case. She also felt a deep sense of compassion for the Peterson family, for the pain and suffering they had endured for so many years. She was grateful that she had been able to help bring them closure, to give them the answers they had been searching for. Lily decided to revisit the memory box, to examine its contents and reflect on the journey that it had taken her on. She carefully opened the box and began to sort through the items, each one a reminder of her childhood. She found the tooth, still wrapped in the faded tissue. She held it in her hand, marveling at its small size and its enormous impact. It was a symbol of innocence, of loss, and of justice. It was a reminder that even the smallest things can have a profound effect on the world. The memory box was no longer just a repository of personal history, it was a testament to the power of memory, the importance of preservation, and the enduring quest for truth and justice. Lily knew that she would never look at it the same way again. It would forever hold the weight of Daisy's story. In the weeks following the trial, Detective Sarah Jenkins found herself giving numerous interviews, reflecting on the Daisy Peterson case and its implications for cold case investigations. She emphasized the importance of persistence and embracing new technologies in the pursuit of justice. The Daisy Peterson case is a reminder that we should never give up hope, even when a case goes cold, Sarah said in one interview. We owe it to the victims and their families to keep searching for the truth, no matter how long it takes. She highlighted the crucial role that modern forensic technology played in solving the case, particularly the use of familial DNA searching. Familial DNA searching is a game-changer for cold case investigations, she explained. It allows us to identify potential suspects even when we don't have a direct DNA match. It's a powerful tool that can help us bring closure to families who have been waiting for answers for years. Sarah also stressed the importance of collaboration and communication between law enforcement agencies, forensic scientists, and other experts. Solving cold cases requires a team effort, she said. We need to work together, sharing information and expertise, to piece together the puzzle and uncover the truth. She acknowledged the ethical concerns surrounding the use of familial DNA searching but argued that the benefits outweighed the risks, provided that the technique was used responsibly and with proper legal oversight. We need to strike a balance between protecting privacy and solving crimes, she said. Familial DNA searching should only be used in cases where there are no other viable leads, and it should be subject to strict guidelines and regulations. Sarah hoped that the Daisy Peterson case would inspire other law enforcement agencies to embrace new technologies and to persist in their efforts to solve cold cases. She believed that with dedication, innovation, and collaboration, it was possible to bring justice to even the most seemingly unsolvable mysteries. The case was a reminder that even the smallest clues, like a childhood tooth in a memory box, could hold the key to unlocking the truth. It was also a testament to the power of human ingenuity and the unwavering pursuit of justice. Sarah's dedication brought a new focus to cold cases. The advances in technology could help bring closure to many more families. The Daisy Peterson case, once a symbol of despair and unanswered questions, ultimately became a story of hope and resilience. It was a reminder that even in the face of unimaginable tragedy, justice can prevail, and closure can be found. The story of Daisy, Lily, Emily, Sarah, and Michael serves as a powerful testament to the interconnectedness of human lives and the unexpected ways in which the past can impact the present. It is a reminder that even the smallest things, like a childhood tooth in a memory box, can have a profound impact on the pursuit of justice. It is also a story about the power of perseverance, the importance of never giving up hope, and the unwavering dedication of those who are committed to seeking the truth. Detective Sarah Jenkins, with her youthful enthusiasm and her embrace of modern technology, showed that even the most seemingly unsolvable cases can be cracked with innovation and determination. The Daisy Peterson case may have closed, but its impact will continue to be felt for years to come. It will serve as a reminder to law enforcement agencies to embrace new technologies and to persist in their efforts to solve cold cases. It will serve as a reminder to families who have lost loved ones to never give up hope that justice will one day be served. And it will serve as a reminder to all of us that even the smallest acts of love and preservation, like a mother placing a child's tooth in a memory box, can have unforeseen and profound consequences. The story is a testament to the enduring human spirit and the unwavering pursuit of justice, offering a sense of hope and the comforting knowledge that even after decades of darkness, light can eventually prevail. It is a reminder that even when hope seems lost, even the smallest spark can ignite a flame that illuminates the truth. The town of Havenwood, once haunted by the ghost of Daisy's disappearance, could finally find peace, knowing that the truth had been revealed and justice had been served. The memory of Daisy Peterson would live on, not as a symbol of tragedy, but as a symbol of hope, resilience, and the enduring power of the human spirit.